February 19th, 2024 regular meeting of the Union County Board of Commissioners to order. I move that the board enter closed. At this time, I will like to recognize Commissioner David Williams for the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those so inclined, please bow your heads in prayer. Lord, we humbly ask for your guidance. Grant us the wisdom to make decisions that will best serve our community and its citizens. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill, to speak with charity and restraint, and to seek the truth. May our deliberations be productive and our resolutions be fair. Inspire us to work together in harmony, even when there is honest disagreement. Remind us that our actions today will shape the future of our community. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, and our work with clarity and accuracy, and all our decisions with impartiality. Amen.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is informal comments from the community. We will recognize the speakers signed up for informal comments. Each speaker must address the board from the lectern and begin their remarks by giving their name, stating whether they are residents of Union County, indicating the municipality within which they reside, if any. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make remarks. A tone may sound at the conclusion of your remarks. A speaker may not yield any of his or her time to another speaker. Speakers may not discuss matters which are subject to public hearings, and they must be courteous in their language and presentation. Restatements or repetitive comments by the same speaker, whether at the same or separate meetings, may be ruled out of order and terminated by the chair. Personal attacks will not be tolerated. Speakers may leave written comments and/or supporting documents, if any, with the clerk to the board. Our first speaker is Fred Alaraza. Fred Alaraza. All right, our next speaker is Sarah Jewell.
This is where I stand right here? Right in front of this computer? Okay, it's been a while since I've been up here. It was many, many years ago. But my name is Sarah Jewell, and I live in Weddington, North Carolina, and I'm speaking on behalf of the debate regarding fluoride. I feel very strongly that you should leave the fluoride in the water. I've lived in Union County about 20 years, and the first 10 years we lived in Indian Trail, where the water was fluoridated or whatever. It's the correct term, fluoridated. And my kids have always been really privileged. We go to the dentist twice a year. We have dental insurance, which I know a lot of people don't. So they've always gone twice a year. So we live there for 10 years. They go to the dentist. They have good dental care. We do the fluoride. We brush their teeth. Even in Union County schools, I think my son he's 22. I'm pretty sure we did the SWISH program then. So we done that, and then we go actually to Dr. Meg Lockery's practice. She's been treating my daughter since she was 3. My daughter's 19. We do the fluoride. When they're older and they have permanent teeth, we seal their teeth. They've had braces. Proper dental care is extremely important for your presentation, your confidence. I'm actually a physical therapist by trade. I've had patients that needed knee replacements. Hey, their orthopedic surgeon couldn't do the surgery because their dental health wasn't appropriate. Your dental health is really important. My son, he just was accepted in medical school at the Brody School of Medicine, and he's actually been scribing for a couple years in cardiology. And your dental health can affect your heart if you don't have good dental health. So it's really important. And when I left Indian Trail after 10 years, then we moved on to well for 10 years. So then the prescription from my kid's dentist was to do more fluoride because we're not getting it in our water every day. And also for myself, when I go to the dentist, they want to know, do you have well water? Do you have fluoridated water? A lot of the people that think this is a medical freedom issue, they're talking about getting rid of fluoride in people in the other side of the county, not where they live. They live in Waxhaw. It doesn't even affect their water. So I don't understand the debate on the fluoride if they're saying medical freedom, but the people on this side of the county, what is their medical freedom? Maybe they want the fluoride. My mom was born in 1945 in Germany. She doesn't have any teeth anymore. She didn't grow up on fluoridated water. She has dentures. And so when I was a child, she made sure I had good dental care. It was extremely important to her. So I really hope you keep the fluoride in the water where there is fluoride. A lot of the county doesn't have fluoride. So I really hope you think about that because it's really important to your health. It's not, this trend is not just here in Union County. It's sort of an attack on science throughout the country. And I really hope you think about the people in the county because a lot of people don't have the privilege to go to the dentist. And the fluoride is important. So that's all. I really hope you consider my opinion and think about all the people in the county, not just a small percentage of them, because it is important. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Margaret Lockery, DDS, MS.
I'm next. Okay, hey, my name is Dr. Meg Lockery. I am a board-certified pediatric dentist and have lived in Union County since 1991 with my husband, Dr. John Mead. We've taken care of people in Union County since 1991, and so we really care about the people here. The best available scientific evidence consistently has indicated that fluoridation of community water supplies is safe and effective. The possibility of any adverse health effects from continuous low-level consumption of fluoride has been and continues to be studied extensively. Of the thousands of credible scientific studies on fluoridation, none has shown health problems associated with the consumption of optimally fluoridated water. Public health controversies sometimes exist regarding public health interventions. In public health, there can be tension between the public good and individual freedoms, which I think somebody mentioned that that was the reason that they didn't want to have fluoride in the water because of individual freedoms. Because public health deals with populations, it has all been impossible to resolve issues to achieve approval from 100% of individuals within the population. When looking at fluoridation, some individuals opposed to fluoridation are sincere in their beliefs. Others ignore what constitutes reputable scientific evidence as defined by the vast majority of the scientific community and choose instead to base their beliefs on personal opinions and studies with flawed methodologies. So, like people that are not really looking at the science. As with any public health measure, a community has the right and obligation to protect the health and welfare of its citizens, even if it means overriding the individual objections of a few people. And I think if we took a vote in Union County and people were informed on the topic, I think the majority of people would want fluoride. I work in 3 different practices. We have one practice who is very anti-fluoride. I mean, a lot of the parents do not want fluoride, and I respect their beliefs. I try to educate them on the benefits of fluoride, but I don't shove fluoride down anyone's throat. But I personally feel like if we take the fluoride out of the water in Union County, the people that we're going to hurt are children who may or may not have access to dental care. We're definitely going to hurt adults with disabilities that we're going to hear from a little bit later. About 95% of adults with disabilities do have dental decay. A lot of them can't cooperate. Like, they can't come in and lay down at my office. So we have to take them to the OR and put them to sleep for dental care. This is super expensive. Right now, I just asked my office manager today, and she said the next appointment for an adult handicapped individual to receive dental care is in August. And we are some of the only people that do this. More and more, I don't know, you guys probably don't even know this, but corporate dentistry is becoming a big thing. Corporations are coming in and they're buying our practices. They're taking them, you know, they're offering us plenty of money. It's a free world. I'm not saying it's bad, but what their bottom line is profit. So my bottom line is taking care of people in my community, and I've always done that. And so I feel like if we remove fluoride, we're really going to be hitting the most vulnerable in our community. So what you can do, if you don't want fluoride, You don't have to get fluoride at my office. I say that's fine. I try to educate people, but if they don't want to, also just get a small, you can get a cheap filter from Lowe's or Home Depot and install that. So that's my thought, and I take care of a lot of the people that really have terrible, terrible dental health. And if you had to sit in my office every day and see screaming 4-year-olds getting teeth extracted, it would be a very personal situation for you too. So I hope you consider leaving the fluoride in the water for the most vulnerable of our population.
Our next speaker is Scott Goodman.
Again, my name is Scott Goodman. I am not a resident of Union County. I live in Mecklenburg County in Matthews. I was the person who started that practice Meg talked about 38 years ago. And I've always seen a number of infants, children, teenagers, and adults with disabilities in the practice. I'm not going to go to the benefit. You've heard a number of speakers talk about it. But my concern is when people talk about mass medication. I went online and got your 2023 water quality report, and you all have great water here. And what was interesting was that you have, on page 5, you have chlorine added to the water because you have to kill bacteria. And that level is 2.1 parts per million, which is 3 times the amount we're looking for fluoride to be in the water. So the question comes in, if someone says they don't want medication added, do they want not having chlorine in the water and having bacteria and getting sick? It's the same health situation with fluoride in the water. And when you look at them, I'm sorry I'm going to bring this up because I'm really like chemistry a lot. If you look at a periodic table, there's something on the left called halides, and right above there is fluoride or fluorine when it's by itself, and chlorine right below. So you're putting chlorine in the water already at a high level, which is needed. We're just asking to add a little bit more to make it 0.7 parts per million so we get the full advantage for the children and the adults. Because when you have fluoridated water, basically systemically, it only helps when the teeth are developing. The first 7 years of life when the enamel's forming, except for the wisdom teeth. The rest of the time it's topical, meaning when it gets on your teeth, and I don't have enough time to go through the whole science about it, it makes them stronger and prevents them from breaking down. Last thing I want to talk about is the economic costs. Studies have been shown for every dollar you put in for fluoridated water, your citizens get $38 in return and less cost for dental care. And this was done in the 80s or 90s, and it's probably higher now at this time. And actually, like we talked about testing the water, we test the wells in a lot of the counties around here. When I did research, fluoride research at Iowa City for my master's on it, we couldn't measure fluoride below 0.3 parts per million. Now the wells can be measured anytime above 0.2. And we found a number of wells, you couldn't see much in it, but a number of them had 0.26, 0.31. We had one at 0.6. The point being that it's in the water already. We're just asking for a little bit to be done. So, and the last point I want to make is, what business comes to you all asking you to do something to help the citizens that's going to make it less profitable for us, for all the dentists coming in? I ask you, please, I beg you, I've worked in non-fluoridated communities, please keep the fluoride in the water for the children and the adults of this good county. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Melinda PL.
3 minutes, okay. Hey, everybody, I'm gonna get started. I'm Melinda PL. I live in Monroe, as does my brother over here, Jake, and I've been working in the disability field for the last 28 years, most of which have been for an organization that is a lifeline to families and individuals. I get the great privilege of learning about all the issues that encompass a person with disabilities throughout a life, and I try to mitigate some of those issues for and with a family to make smooth a difficult path. In addition, I have to go home every night and do the same for my own family member. This is Jake, and he is okay with what I'm about to say. Jake is 42, almost 43 years old, and after a lot of work, he is independent in his own community. That said, he has some challenges that most people don't realize, and that's why we're here tonight. Even at 42 years old, we have to discuss and manage oral hygiene and dental care for Jake constantly. For lots of reasons, oral hygiene is not a priority for my guy, And it's extremely difficult to micromanage that for an otherwise independent man. Jake's an adult, and it's a full family effort to manage his dental health. I rely on quality dental care for him at least twice a year, usually more. And I can assure you that even with all the work we do on this, Jake has significantly more dental decay than the average person. And he's not alone. You've heard the statistics. There are hundreds of people with disabilities, children and adults, about 4,500 in Union County. It's a lot of people. Most of them are likely to be on Medicaid, and when you have Medicaid, it's very good to find good dental providers. Many of us seek out pediatric providers for our adult loved ones with special health care needs because they require specialty care. Thank goodness these pediatric providers, like Dr. Lockery and Goodman, take on the extra load of caring for these patients. Most people with disabilities do not have that option, and they're lucky to be able to go to a regular dentist twice a year. There are a lot of different reasons for that, to include the need for general anesthesia in a hospital in order to get a cleaning. This is costly, difficult to access, and there are long waiting lists. As you've heard, bigger entities are now buying out pediatric dental offices. I know. For people who, and they do not have OR privileges like our pediatric dentists. I'm gonna finish. This just makes it harder for people like Jake to access quality dental care. You can wait many months for an appointment and then many more to get a slot in the OR, and by that time, a year has passed, and the only option is for an oral surgeon to remove their teeth. That's all Medicaid pays for, but that's a story for another day. Lots of people with disabilities simply forego dental care because of lack of access. Everyone benefits and no one is harmed from fluoride in the water supply, but most especially you would want that frontline protection for our community's most vulnerable people. You're only promising to increase dental decay rates when you remove it, and that is a public health issue that is very hard for me to swallow. Please vote no to remove the fluoride. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Norman Alley.
I'm Norman Alley. I live in Union County. Formerly served on the City of Dover, New Hampshire Water and Sewer Commission. And I'm here to tell you why I believe water fluoridation is the biggest public health scam of the 20th century. In the 1920s and 1930s, Alcoa, the Aluminum Corporation of America, was discharging fluorine gas into the air and dumping fluoride byproducts into the rivers. As these products became a legal headache for Alcoa, they hired a biochemist named Gerald Cox, who claimed to show that fluoride in the diet of rats prevented dental caries. Alcoa claimed Cox had discovered a quote-unquote new vitamin which could prevent cavities. This quote-unquote new vitamin was fluoride, and Cox was among the first to suggest that it might be added to the public water supplies. Around the same time, a U.S. public health dentist named H. Trendley Dean was conducting surveys across the United States where high concentrations of fluoride caused dental fluorosis, modeling of the teeth. He claimed he found an inverse relationship between fluoride in the water and the incidence of dental cavities. That claim has been disputed, and it's alleged that Dean had later admitted under oath that he cherry-picked the data from his surveys to get the results that he wanted. Dean's surveys led to the start of the first trials of artificial water fluoridation in 1945 in the cities of Newburgh and Kingston, New York. These studies happened to be monitored by Dr. Harold Hodge. Hodge was the chief toxicologist for the Manhattan Project. And for those who may not know what that is, that was the atomic bomb project. The bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Manhattan Project was using fluoride in massive amounts to enrich uranium to construct the bombs. And Hodge was hired, and by the way, he was a dentist. It was hired because of his prior research on fluoride and dental fluorosis at the University of Rochester. The Newburgh-Kingston trials, and I'm going to tie this all together, the Newburgh-Kingston trials were intended to span over 10 years. However, after 5 years, Hodge and Cox published a paper in the Journal of the American Dental Association claiming that fluoride's only harm was modeling of the teeth. The message to the public was clear. Fluoride is safe so even children can drink it. Just weeks later, the U.S. Public Health Service officially endorsed fluoridation. And now, here's the shocking truth about Harold Hodge, if you haven't heard. In 1999, the Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Plutonium Files, by Eileen Wellsome, documented Hodge's involvement in human experiments while working on the bomb project, in which unsuspecting subjects were injected with uranium and plutonium. This is the same guy who stood at the blackboard in 1957 and said, "I see no reason to delay water fluoridation." In 1950, fluoride was thought to act systemically and pre-eruptively before a child's teeth came in. Today, it's widely understood that it acts topically and that its effect is post-eruptive. The justification for fluoridation given 70 years ago is antiquated, wrong, and promoted by individuals who had a clear conflict of interest. And in the case of Mr. Hodge, a history of secret and unethical human experiments, unknowingly subjecting subjects to uranium and plutonium. Fluoride, and as a water and sewer commissioner, I always wondered, or former water and sewer commissioner, why is this the only additive that targets the user? Everything else we do to our water, put in our water, is for the water or the system. It is forced medication, and let me also say, there's never been a single randomized double-blind study that I know of showing that water fluoridation reduces cavities. And the FDA never approved the fluoride tablets given to children who live in these unfluoridated communities.
Mr. Alley?
Yes.
Thank you. Your time's up.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Thomas Pitman.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Pitman. I live in Indian Trail, and I'm a pediatrician at a clinic in Wesley Chapel. I came here to explain why I support keeping fluoride in the water supply. Dental cavities are the most common chronic disease of childhood. They're painful, expensive to fix, but studies have shown that they have broader implications for a child's health. They can impact a child's nutrition, lead to school absences, and can affect appearance, which has negative effects on a child's self-esteem. Obviously, there are many things a person has to do to protect their teeth, but one highly effective way is by consuming fluoridated water. The reason we first started using fluoride to prevent cavities is because communities that naturally had higher amounts of fluoride in their water were found to have lower rates of cavities. The goal of fluoridation programs is to raise the level of fluoride found naturally in water to a level that protects teeth. This process is very effective. Studies show that a 25% decrease in dental cavities in communities that use fluoridated water. It's also safe. A review of literature that was last updated in 2013 showed no evidence of side effects other than the risk of staining teeth if fluoride levels are too high, which is unlikely in a well-regulated supplementation program. Specific concerns that I've heard raised regarding fluoridated water include lower intelligence, increased risk of cancer, increased risk of fracture or osteoporosis, and allergic reactions. The review specifically found no evidence to link fluoride with any of those conditions. I also want to emphasize that adding fluoride to our water is similar to how we add iodine to salt to prevent thyroid disease, folate to bread and cereal to prevent spinal cord disease in infants. And all three of these public health initiatives have been effective in decreasing disease burden. And while we have developed other sources of fluoride that can help prevent dental cavities, this actually hasn't eliminated the benefit of fluoride in drinking water. In 2011, the city of Calgary in Canada decided to remove fluoride from their water, and a study performed after this showed that rates of dental disease were significantly higher than in Edmonton, Canada, where they kept the fluoride in the water. Calgary is now restarting their fluoridation program. Now, separately, as a citizen, not necessarily as a doctor, I'd also add that there's an important economic consideration to fluoridation. There have been studies done on the cost effectiveness of fluoridating water, which have demonstrated that for every dollar spent on a fluoridation program, the community can expect to save in the range of $20 to $38. And as a parent, I can tell you there are other sources of topical fluoride, but they're not always the most pleasant to apply for unwilling children. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Allison McMahon or McMahon. Allison McMahon. All right, next speaker is Harold Schumacher.
Guinness convention in town. Good evening, Commissioners. At the last meeting, someone had mentioned that they couldn't understand why we would stop listening to the opinions of health experts. And I disagree with that. I don't think we should listen to anyone's opinion on this. We have proven science to guide us on this issue. So let's look at some science. Being a visual person here, I've got some visual aids. I've got a tablespoon and a baby spoon there. The tablespoon represents the probable fatal dose of fluoride, 1 tablespoon. The baby spoon there, that represents the probable fatal dose of arsenic, which is just a few drops. I think you'd agree with me that neither of those should be called safe. No toxicologist or chemist would ever say either of these is safe. All you could ethically say is that if you greatly dilute it, it becomes less dangerous. It is never safe. But we don't just put fluoride in the water like the dentists use in their office. We put in hydrophosphoric acid. The distributor for the product used by Union County is Univar Solutions. Univar lists a range of arsenic of 10 parts per million to 50 parts per million on the product specifications for their hydrofluoric acid. So let me give you a visual representation of hydrofluoric acid. There you go. A combination of both of those. This is important. There's no dentist in this room, in this state, or in this country that would ever use hydrofluoric acid on a patient's teeth topically. They would never do it. You've never done it, and you never would. No toothpaste manufacturer would ever use hydrofluoric acid in their toothpaste. It's toxic waste. There's laws against that. It doesn't exist. It can't be used in a consumer product. What we're exposing here is a titanic ship of lies. Some dentists, the CDC, the media, they've invested too much into this titanic lie to admit they're wrong. They will go down with the ship before they come clean. Fortunately, we have a board that is willing to carry the people of Union County on their backs off this ship to waiting lifeboats. Hopefully tonight it'll be all 5 of you that leave this sinking ship. The National Toxicology Program report confirming the 55 studies that show fluoride exposure is tied to lower IQ among children was blocked from release by Assistant Health and Human Services Director Rachel Levin. A court later ordered that report to be released, and you can now read it for yourself. You have a choice to make of who you stand with. Do you stand with the people, or do you stand with Assistant Health and Human Services Director Rachel Levin? I hope tonight all of you will stand with the people and stand with science and stand with common sense. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Kevin Reed.
Hi, my name is Kevin Reed, and I live in Union County. I do not consent to be medically treated by fluoride through water or any other means. The only right thing to do with this ordinance is to pass it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Maria Reed.
Good evening, I'm Maria Reed, and I live in Union County. The Food and Drug Administration classifies fluoridated toothpaste as an over-the-counter drug, but fluoride-free toothpaste as a personal care product. This makes me conclude that fluoridated water is medicated water, water that contains a drug. There is a big difference in adding nutrients to foods such as iron, vitamin D, folic acid, iodine to salt, versus adding fluoride, because fluoride is not a nutrient. The body does not need fluoride. It's different. It's not a nutrient. People who do not want food with added supplements can seek out foods without them. It's much more difficult to avoid tap water. Fluoride removing systems are not cheap at all. No, you can't buy them at Lowe's for $5 or even $50. I already pay for my tap water. I don't have to pay additionally to remove the fluoride that I don't want it. It's important to note that dentists are not qualified to give recommendations when it comes to anything else in the body but teeth. They're not qualified to make claims such as fluoride in low doses is safe. Dentists are not toxicologists. The National Toxicology Program has stated there are no safe levels of fluoride in drinking water. There is evidence that the Center for Disease Control and National Institute of Health acted to prevent the release of the review report on fluoride's toxicity made by the National Toxicology Program. This evidence was released as part of the ongoing lawsuit against the Environmental Protection Agency. None of this information is mentioned by the mainstream media nor dentists, not surprisingly. Since 2010, 274 communities have rejected water fluoridation. The latest in USA was Charlesburg City Council of Alabama, which discontinued the fluoridation of city water on October 17, 2023. Questions to the board members. Can any of you provide the public with the document that shows, number one, you were given authority to make medical decisions on behalf of all Union County residents? Number two, you informed each resident the risks and side effects of fluoridated water. And number three, you were given consent from each resident to be medically treated. Do you have this document? You are informed that voting against the ordinance opposes medical freedom and violates the right of informed consent. Please make it right and pass the ordinance. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Fred Gertis.
Evening, board members. My name's Fred Gertis. I'm living in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, and as a retired chemical engineer trained in the scientific method, I'm going to help you sort out the science and the political science associated with this terrible public policy. The gold standard of fluoridated water research is the Lotus report. That was the University of Manchester pulled 17 million records out of nationalized healthcare in England. From that, they pulled the cohort of all those people who were exposed to fluoridated water. And then they pulled another cohort of those people who did not get served fluoridated water, but used fluoridated toothpaste. When they compared the dental records of all of these 17 million people from the period of 2010 to 2020, they discovered that there was a statistically 3% improvement in experience of cavities in the group that had been exposed to fluoridated water. 3%. Okay? And then they also found that the cohort that did not get fluoridated water but used fluoridated toothpaste had the same exact identical 3% savings. Now, similarly, at the same time, there was a report done in Canada which showed that male children exposed to fluorides in utero showed about a 3% net loss in IQ. Those are valid statistical studies. They're peer-reviewed, they're accepted nationwide, worldwide, which is why about half the countries in Europe have permanently banned fluoridation. The EPA has chosen to ignore that, and on the advice of private interest groups who have money interests involved, have continued to support this policy. And in fact, they use something called the Basque study, which was done in the Basque region of Spain. But that particular report did not use fluoridated water as a source. Instead, they examined the fluoride levels in the urine of pregnant women. And they later correlated this to the IQ test of the children as they reached age 6 or 7. And the results of that study were actually the same as the Lotus report until some adjustments were made to how the urine samples were handled, involving some dilution factors and some other questionable practices, the net result of which showed much greater improvement in the dental performance of fluoridated water. However, that same report also showed that there was a 15 to 28-point increase in the IQ of males exposed in utero. that is biologically impossible. So that report is discredited. And in fact, the author of that report was invited to testify at the EPA trial going on in California, where the EPA is being pressured to treat fluorides under the Toxic Substances Control Act, which it falls under, but the EPA refuses to process it by that logistics. They're going to lose that lawsuit in a couple of weeks. But in the meanwhile, the important thing that I want you to be aware of,
Mr. Curtis, your time is up.
this
Thank
is
you.
very important. I would like to go on for a moment
No,
if I
sir.
might.
Your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you, too.
The next speaker is Lisa Laney.
Please be aware also that teeth mineralize between the ages of 6
Mr.
and 8
Curtis,
years
your
old.
time's up.
Thank you. And that
Mr. Curtis, your time's up. You're causing a disturbance. I'm going to have you removed and/or arrested. Please leave the meeting. Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa Laney.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Laney, and I live in Mecklenburg County. I've worked at Pediatric Dentistry of Matthews for 24 years. I'm here tonight to tell you how I feel about the importance of fluoride in our water. I was raised in New Salem, an area of Union County that does not have fluoride in water. I was brought up on well water. While I was a child, every time I went to the dentist, I had a cavity. I was terrified of the dentist. After becoming an adult and moving to Mecklenburg County, I no longer have any dental problems. I do not believe I've had a cavity since I have started drinking the water of Mecklenburg County that is fluoridated. I went to dental school and I work for Pediatric Dentistry of Matthews, and I see, as a dental professional, the children for 24 years I have seen, parents that do not want their child to have fluoride, the uptick of cavities to those children are very high. The ones that have fluoride in their water, toothpaste, and our dental treatments, their cavities are very minimal. I see it every day. I don't have an extensive education on fluoride. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor. I'm a dental professional that has worked in the program for 24 years, and I'm telling you now, having fluoride does help prevent dental decay. Please do not remove fluoride from the water of Union County for the benefit of our children and our adults. And I just have one more thing to say. If the people really don't want fluoride in their water, they can go and buy a reverse osmosis water treatment for their home that will completely take out all fluoride out of their water. But for the underprivileged children whose parents may not brush their teeth or help them get to a dentist, I beg you, this is the only way that they will get some dental help at home. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Amanda Stanford.
Hello, thank you. I'm a resident of Indian Trail and have been for 9 years. This is a political dog whistle, and it's embarrassing. The fact that this has been exactly like an episode of Parks and Recs is a joke, and it's not a funny one. We've now wasted 3 sessions on an issue that is clearly meant to take things away from us, divide us, and distract us from issues that some of us would rather not know about. Some of us are angry about these things, about fluoride, and some of you would rather not talk about issues like the school voucher program, which again takes tax money away from public schools and gives it to private and now apparently religious ones. You know who has religious schools paid for by the government? Morocco. Egypt. I know because I've taught English there, I've seen it. Is that what we are now? We give money to religious schools? Some of you don't want us talking about the fact that our state legislature is using the courts to tie up $1.7 billion. That should have gone to the public school system a long time ago. And isn't that time inconvenience for school vouchers, by the way? $1 billion going to unregulated religious schools. And again, is that what we are? A country that lets elected officials openly cheat our kids out of schooling by continuously appealing the Leandra ruling, even though it's been a settled case for a decade. That's $73 million for Union County alone, by the way. You have sway. You have sway, commissioners, with our state officials that you aren't using. And by wasting our time on this fluoride circus, you're helping them tie up that money by dividing us in Union County even further. And, by the way, our county sewer system is still failing and has been since Todd Johnson sat in those chairs. Some of your voters might be fooled by this whole fluoride circus, but many of us are not. And many of us are on the fence about a lot of things, and we are choosing sides, and it might not be the ones you want. So please stop taking things away, stop trying to divide us for political gain, and start holding our state politicians to account for Union County, because we have things that we need to talk about that are very important for our county, that actually do influence us, because a lot of the people that have spoken tonight don't actually live in the parts of the county that the water will even affect. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jeff Gates.
My name is Jeff Gates. I live in Indian Trail, and there's been a lot of discussion about the fluoride, and for 70 years now or so it's been in the water, and I'm feeling it's helping with people. One of the things that the dentist is going to say, after a child has a candy bar, has a diet, has a Coca-Cola, brush your teeth. Well, the kids don't always do that. Do they brush their teeth? Do they floss as well as they should? We have an item here that will actually help with the dental, because I see it around the county, people that have not the best teeth. I wish I had better teeth. I wish I flossed better. I wish I brushed better. Things that I didn't do that I think the fluoride is going to help. I would hate to see it taken away. For the folks that don't want it in the water, they can buy their systems. They can buy a system at Home Depot or Lowe's or Amazon. One of these dispensers. You know, they can bring it to their house. They get clean water from these, and it's tested by Deer Park or wherever they buy their water from. It's something that they can do if they don't want the fluoride. Buy this, bring it back to your house. But don't take the fluoride out of the water. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Abigail Prado.
Good evening. I am a resident of Union County and I live in Waxhaw. I'm here tonight to present the board with evidence that fluoride is a known neurotoxin in the scientific community and to present a study which has found that fluoride in public drinking water can cause significant IQ damage to gestating children when consumed by pregnant mothers. A study has found that very low levels of fluoride, levels much lower than those found in communities where government agencies deliberately add fluoride to their drinking water, can impair brain development of a gestating child. In fact, fluoride has been found to cause more damage to pregnant women and their growing babies than lead, mercury, or arsenic. The study found that pregnant women with a urine fluoride concentration of 0.2 milligrams per liter was enough to lower the child's IQ by 1 whole point. Pregnant women living in fluoridated communities were found to have 4 to 5 times as much fluoride in their urine. It is estimated that more than 72% of public drinking water systems in America are fluoridated. Thus, millions of pregnant women are currently being exposed to levels of fluoride that have the potential to lower their children's IQ by at least 4 to 6 points. The loss of a single IQ point for an individual child may seem imperceptible to some, but the societal cost of millions of children losing 5 IQ points or more is enormous. A loss of even 1 IQ point translates to a 2% reduction in lifetime economic productivity, or roughly $20,000 in American money. Not to mention the additional educational cost required for children with lower IQs. Even if we take moral and philosophical questions about protecting children out of this discussion, how long can our society bear the cost of knowingly lowering our population's IQ? In research studies, a benchmark dose is used to identify a dose or concentration that would likely cause a defined amount of harm, in this case, the loss of 1 IQ point. What makes this so significant is that the benchmark dose methodology is part of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's risk assessment methodology, and the authors of this study used a 1-point IQ drop as the adverse effect amount because the EPA itself has used the same level of IQ loss in their own risk assessments and has recommended use of such levels. If the EPA applied a standard safety margin for fluoride being consumed by pregnant women, they would conclude that any amount of urine fluoride concentration above 2 milligrams per liter is unsafe and unacceptable. The standard would be 35 times lower than what the American Dental Association and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommend for fluoridated communities. Dr. Bruce Lanphier, who has a Master's of Public Health degree, is a physician, clinical scientist, and an award-winning researcher who is known for his research on environmental neurotoxins. In his article titled, "It is Time to Protect Kids Developing Brains from Fluoride," he states, "Given the evidence that fluoride is toxic to the developing brain, it is time for health organizations and regulatory bodies to review their recommendations and regulations to ensure they protect pregnant women and their children. We can act now by recommending that pregnant women and infants reduce their fluoride intake or stop it completely."
Ms. Prado, your time's up. Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers who have not signed up who wish to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Next on the agenda is item 24103, recognize Lifesaver Award recipient. I will recognize Deputy County Manager Patrick Nyland for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight it's my honor to recognize Sheriff's Deputy Christopher Byram for the Lifesaver Award. I'd like to invite Deputy Byram, Lieutenant May, and Sheriff Eddie Cathy up to the podium, if you would. Well, yes, sir. Just going to read a little bit about Deputy Byram's heroic acts. On January 31st, during the school lunch hour, a student frantically approached Byram, pointing to his throat. Byram immediately realized the student was choking and, using his training, began performing abdominal thrusts, which successfully removed the food blockage in the student's airway. Byram and several other staff members continued to check on the student, who was fully recovered. In 2022, Byron was given the UCPS Resource Officer of the Year. He was also given the C.C. McGee School Resource Officer of the Year that same year. So we couldn't be more proud of our deputy. We appreciate you being in the right time, at the right place, and can't thank you enough for your life-saving efforts. So thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda and consent agenda. Before we do that, is if there's no objection, we need to make a couple of adjustments to the agenda. First, if there's no objection, we're going to remove item 24058 UC Water CIP Workshop Follow-Up from the agenda due to the county manager being unable to attend the meeting this evening. Second, we need to add one item to the consent agenda, which is an authorization for consent judgment and settlement agreement and other documents related to the condemnation judicial matter captioned Union County versus Joyce Long Thomas and husband Norman C. Thomas and Truist Bank. The material term of this settlement is total compensation from Union County for the property owner in the amount of $99,000 in settlement of the value of the county's property interest acquisition. The action requested for approval is as follows. Number one, authorize the county attorneys for the county to negotiate and execute a consent judgment and settlement agreement substantially consistent with this agenda item. And 2, authorize the county attorney to execute any documents necessary to effectuate the terms of a consent judgment and settlement agreement substantially consistent with this item agenda pursuant to the property settlement documentation or document. If there are no objections to these agenda adjustments, I'll ask if there are any other revisions requested to the agenda.
I just want to make a motion to accept consent agenda as amended.
All right. Any discussion on the revisions? All right. Commissioner Helms has made a motion to approve the consent agenda as was modified. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right. We're now at the business portion of our agenda. For the first item of business is item 24092, Union County Code Amendment, prohibition of fluoride in Union County water treatment systems. I will recognize Deputy County Manager Patrick Nyland for this item.
Thank you, Chair. The proposed amendment would be an amendment to Division 1 of Article 2 of Chapter 34 of Union County Code. The amendment would prohibit the introduction or depositing of fluoride or any chemical that contains fluoride into water at water treatment plants and water treatment system which Union County owns. This item was heard by the board at the last meeting, but because the vote was not unanimous, it has to come back before the board for consideration.
All right. Any discussion? Commissioner Richard Helms.
Yeah, I think we need to acknowledge, I've heard from a number of medical specialists. Our dentists were here today. Last week we heard from a professor from East Carolina. So I will be objecting removing that. We've had told about a lot of internet that said this is what evils there is on fluoride. But yet we hear from our medical professionals and the benefits that they have. Now, I can tell you my children had the blessing of growing up with fluoride in their water, and it has done that. They have very little dental issues. And, it was talked about we're making decisions for other people, but a lot of our underprivileged don't have an opportunity or don't take the opportunity to bring their voice to let us hear them. And so that, I think that's key. I think the history in the United States of putting fluoride in at a minimum has made our young people's life healthier and more pleasant. I can tell you that I grew up on a well, and my dental problems kind of stopped once I got living on water that was fluoridated. So I will not be supporting a resolution to remove the fluoride, and I'd ask my peers to do the same.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this point, I think a motion would be appropriate, and then we can have further discussion. I would like to move the adoption of the ordinance amending Division 1 of Article 2 of Chapter 34 of the Union County Code. And furthermore, to add some additional discussion, one of the speakers tonight had mentioned other chemicals that are added to the water and how, adding fluoride is the same as adding chlorine or other chemicals to the water. And it's true, we do add other chemicals to the water. There's no doubt about that. But I have to disagree that it's the same. The chlorine that we add to the water, the chloramine in some cases that we add to the water, there are a number of chemicals that get added to the water, but those chemicals are added to treat the water itself, to make it safe to drink, in some cases to remove or address odor concerns or drinkability. None of those other chemicals are added to the water to treat us. Fluoride is the one exception. Fluoride is added to the water to treat us. And I think that should give us pause. It gives me pause. And I'm somebody who, I don't think this has to be a fluoride versus anti-fluoride kind of debate. I mean, I believe, I embrace the topical benefits of using fluoride in the mouth. It seems like, for me, the issue is really one of medical freedom and consent. The solution seems pretty darn simple to me, which is, let's stop putting something in the water that's meant to treat us and give people the freedom to choose. What an extraordinary idea, to give people the freedom to choose. And the good news is that there are all kinds of over-the-counter products out there, fluoride toothpastes, fluoride rinses, using medical-grade fluoride, I might add, not hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is the byproduct of fluoride manufacture, but actual sodium fluoride, medical-grade fluoride, that you use topically in your mouth, or you rinse or you brush, and then you spit it out. And I think that's an important point too, is that the benefits of fluoride are topical. There are no benefits to ingesting it. And, I think about all the over-the-counter products that we get at the grocery store or, CVS or, convenience stores that you don't need a prescription for. Virtually all of them have recommended dosages. What's the recommended dosage for fluoridated water? That's something we really don't talk about, but it's ingested. So to me, it seems like, medical freedom, consent loom large here, and this need not be a debate between fluoride and anti-fluoride forces. I'll kind of exit with this, which is one of the speakers that talked about, I think I'm paraphrasing here, maybe I'm pretty close. Removing fluoride from the water, for me, is hard to swallow. Well, that's the point, isn't it? You don't swallow it, you use it topically. And the elegant solution here is to embrace freedom, to rinse with it, and then spit it out. That's what we're meant to do with it. And instead of, putting it into our water and then buying a reverse osmosis machine that costs, who knows how much, how about, we don't put a chemical into the water that's meant to treat us. And if you want to use fluoride, if you're a strong believer in its efficacy, then by all means, go out and buy a tube of fluoride toothpaste. Go out and buy a fluoride rinse and use those products the way they're meant to be used. Our 50 United States are small r, wonderful small r Republican laboratories of federal government. That's how our Constitution was set up. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in embracing freedom of choice, where that is, and I think here that's what's before us today. Let's embrace freedom of choice and let people who wish to use fluoride do just that. But let's not add it to our water and force those who don't want it or may have some sort of medical sensitivity to it, force them to buy some machine to take it out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be supporting robustly this motion.
Any further discussion? Vice Chairman Helms?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've talked at length over this topic. We've spent, at least 3 meetings now discussing fluoride. And I think that there's a couple of things that have rang true with all the discussion that we've had. I think that everyone needs to understand that there is a difference between the fluoride treatment that you're getting at your dental professional's office and what you're receiving in your tap water. So I'm going to have to agree with Commissioner Williams that there is a big difference, and what's being put in your tap water is a substance called hydrofluorosilicic acid. I mean, it's tough for me to even say that word. But understand, though, that this particular substance is a substance that is used in all sorts of different applications. So from metal sterilization, electroplating, animal hide tanning, and even glass etching. And we're putting this stuff in our water, now granted in smaller percentages. So the point of it is we can sit here and we can debate the science till the cows come home. I mean, we can sit here all day long and we can debate this. We can debate the effectiveness of fluoride for dental or medical benefits. But the truth of the matter is that what you're getting in your tap is very different from what you're getting at the dentist. It's not the same. So it's different at the chemical composition level, and it's different in how it's administered as well. In our last meeting, you know, we heard from folks from East Carolina University. We've received emails, I think, from everybody at East Carolina University. It's sort of a wonder to me why it is that we're attracting such big interest from East Carolina University, you know, over the topic of fluoride in Union County, North Carolina. Especially when there's other counties in the state that have removed fluoride, and it's been a non-issue for those counties. And then there's also that big issue of consent. So healthcare. Healthcare, or in this case dental care, I would argue is not one size fits all. It's not, you know, one of these, you know, same size hats that everybody gets to put on. And I think it's key that everyone understand that when you go to a dentist, when you go to a dental professional, and you get that fluoride treatment, you consent to that treatment. You consent to being treated with that particular chemical. So I'll say this, and I'll sum up my comments, but the decision that we have to make as a board tonight really isn't if fluoride is good or bad. That's not really the argument here. The argument is if this board, the Union County Board of Commissioners, has the authority to put a medicine or a medical substance in our water without the consent of the residents. Should this board ignore consent? By putting a substance in the water that is for dental or medicinal benefit, are we not, at least in a sense, mandating medication for the public? Do we have the authority to do so? My opinion is that we do not. And so therefore, I will be supporting the motion.
Any further discussion? Deputy County Manager Nyland, please read the text again for us, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
Before we vote.
So this would be section 3420. It would be in addition to Article 2 of Division 1, and it reads, "The introduction or depositing of fluoride or any chemical that contains fluoride into the water at water treatment plants and water treatment system which Union County owns and operates is prohibited. The prohibition does not apply to any water at water treatment plants and water treatment systems over which Union County does not have complete control over concerning fluoridation and water treatment, including without limitation the Catawba River Water Supply Project."
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay?
Hey.
Nay. The next matter of business is item 24111, opioid settlement funding plan update. I will recognize Michelle Lancaster for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. I have a couple of items for you tonight. The first is an update on the opioid settlement, specifically on a new request that we have for funding regarding a partnership with the Sheriff's Office and Union County Public Schools. I think most of you will remember that Commissioner Chairman Rushing actually had asked about a particular putting some funds into the school system when we did our initial and secondary recommendations. And so we have been working together with UCPS, the Sheriff's Office, some staff from Human Services to look at what opportunities there would be that would align with the utilization of opioid funds. And so tonight what I have is a request for you to add funding for a pilot program that UCPS would implement at Porter Ridge and Sun Valley clusters in their middle and high schools. These have been identified by those staff as a place that they have staff and principal buy-in, and that they think that they have some issues that they would like to address. They would like to implement the Safety First curriculum. This is a curriculum that's made up of 13 lessons on alcohol, opioids, fentanyl, psychedelics, and other drugs. We would be looking to add one part-time position to the sheriff's office that would be called, and I'll explain this in a second when I'm asking your, for a particular action, something like a substance use education coordinator. We're still working on exactly what that would be. And this would take approximately $95,000 to fund through 2026. That would align with the other opioid-funded programs that this board has approved. You did a 3-year funding, so this would line those up so that we would be on that same schedule. If the board is so inclined to support this tonight, what we would do is bring back to you a full resolution. You'll remember we have a fairly voluminous resolution that has to be adopted for the use of opioid funds that needs to go back to the AG's office. And then we would also bring back to you the particular position title that we decide to use that would need to be added to your pay plan for that half-time position. So again, tonight, if you are so inclined to endorse this opportunity, then we would bring that back to you at your next agenda as a consent item for approval, and we'll begin work with the staff at UCPS and the Sheriff's Office to begin this implementation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Hill.
Thanks, sir. First of all, Michelle, thank you for the update. Really appreciate that. The question I've got is, and I may have missed this, I think that you stated this, but the decision to pilot at Porter Ridge and Sun Valley.
So that was a UCPS request. These are areas, specifically some of the discussion that we've had is this is some areas where the principals in particular at the high schools have come forward and said, we have some issues that we would really like to get some more focused attention around vaping and drug use and other things. And so there is a vaping module as part of this. And so that's how those two were identified. And then I would expect in our discussions that we've had that the expectation would be once this pilot has taken place, that if this really takes hold and we see success, that we would look to expand this to the other clusters at UCPS. But we really want to kind of try it out in those two clusters.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that, and I would be in agreement with that. You know, this is one of the things that when we started talking about the opioid settlement that I was most excited about, and I shared that with Commissioner Rushing, you know, that excitement about partnering there with UCPS and the Sheriff's Office, and we sort of envisioned something that was, well, for us, you know, old enough to remember the DARE program, we envisioned something along that lines. For just my opinion, I only speak for myself when I say this, but I am supportive of this, and I would like to see more information brought back to us about, you know, what this would look like specifically, and you know, hopefully, if it's successful, then I would certainly like to see more information about implementing it throughout the entire district.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Thank you.
If approved, will it start in the fall, the next school year?
I am not sure. I think once we've got to identify a person, and I should say, I think in conversations that I've had with the Sheriff's Office and with the folks at UCPS, we would anticipate this probably being a retired sheriff's deputy or some staff person who has worked in the school system that has an interest in working in these types of education programs that has a law enforcement / education kind of feel. So once that person's identified, I think UCPS is really ready. I know the Sheriff's Office is ready as soon as they can identify that person and get moving. So potentially it could start this school year prior to the fall happening. But we can bring back more of those details to you once we spend a little more time working out how that really would work and getting somebody on board who can delve in and do the training that would come along with this. The training is actually at no cost. The funding here really is for the part-time hours that it would take for 2 years, and some kind of nominal money that we put in, about $20,000 for supplies, copies, you know, being able to take materials to the schools.
Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Michelle, one follow-up question. As far as the materials, Is that something that the sheriff's office is developing?
No, this is a program that, it was developed back in 2017, so there's a curriculum that is already exists. It's been used nationally, and this is what UCPS staff has identified that they would like to implement.
That'd
So
be
they
a
don't
sa-
have to develop that. This is something, the modules already exist.
And that would be the safety first?
Safety first, and I can send you some information on that so you can take a look at it.
Yeah, I would certainly appreciate that. I'd like to
Absolutely.
review some of this as well.
I will send that to you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question.
Commissioner Merrill.
But I just want to confirm, it says in 2 clusters, so I just want to confirm that this will include elementary, middle, and high for those 2 clusters?
Just middle and high school. This curriculum is middle and high school specific, and that's actually what UCPS has said they would like to start with. You don't see, and what we've done a fair amount of research, there's not a lot of curriculum that goes down to the elementary school, but there are some, but they definitely know that in the middle and high school is where they see more concentrated issues that they want to tackle, and so that's why this would really focus on that middle and high school for those 2 clusters.
Okay. The last comment I wanted to make was about the 1 part-time position. I would almost like to get some feedback or some research on maybe 2 positions, one that has the law enforcement background and one that has like an education or healthcare background. You know, so that it's a true partnership and not just the full burden of the sheriff department.
I think that we would be open to that, and
So
I'm
that's
sure
just
that-
a little bit of feedback I
Okay,
would have.
Absolutely.
Well, I think the board's open to certainly hearing more information.
I'm actually, I think I can see consensus, so we will provide you additional information, bring back a couple of pieces that we would need for utilizing the funding, and I will talk to Jared at UCPS and figure out what kind of position they would use and what that would take, and so we'll bump that number up, and I'll send you that information before your next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, ma'am, don't go anywhere. The next item on our agenda is item 112, the 2024 legislative agenda discussion.
Yes.
And I'll again recognize Michelle Lancaster again for this item.
Thank you very much. I am going to spend a little time going over a proposed legislative agenda for 2024. I've talked to each of you individually and gotten feedback and some items. And so as I go through the items, I will recognize some of you who have given me specific items if you'd like to add some additional color to those so that everybody can hear those. The guiding principles, these are the guiding principles that the county has used since I've been here working on the legislative work. So essentially supporting any efforts that protect and/or enhance local government's revenues and/or increase our local funding flexibility, and opposing any unfunded mandates and initiatives that fail to fully fund services that might be shifted to the county from the state. So as always, we try not to challenge our delegation or the legislature, but sometimes we have to. And these are the principles that we use specifically when things get kind of to that 11th hour in the General Assembly and bills can be moving pretty quickly. This gives myself, staff, and the county's lobbyists something to kind of lean on and say, okay, this is why we're going to be against this or for it. So we will keep those guiding principles in place. I'm going to go through these. These are in no particular order. At the end, I am going to give you kind of a group of them that we think are priorities. And that would be myself and the manager's office met last week to go over these. This is a short session that we're going into, so in theory, it's supposed to be short. It begins the end of April. The delegation members that I've spoken to have assured me that they are really going to target a short session. We haven't seen one of those in quite a while, but hopefully that's the case. And traditionally, kind of the practice is that for a short session, you look for things that are non-controversial, that your own delegation supports unanimously. So things that aren't, should be with some ease to go into the session. I say that, and then once we go through this list, you'll see that we have quite a few items. What I would also say is that my experience would tell me, and also just our practice, that it's a good thing to put things in front of the legislature that you might not be expecting action on this session because it's short session, but that you really want them to know that are important to you as an organization, as a county, so that they can expect to see them again. You'll also see some things that are on here that were on our last legislative agenda. And so that's to continue to, I think, to articulate to them the importance of those is not a bad thing. And so I think it'll make sense as we go through this. So the first two items that we have as requests, one would be funding for EMS bases. I think you all know, as you've discussed with Patrick and the staff, of looking at doing some modifications to the dynamic deployment model that is utilized here. We would be seeking some funding. I'm leaving these fairly broad so that as we work with the delegation on what we might be able to obtain through the session, we would get a little more granular in our language. But we would just be looking for some state-supported funding for allowing you the opportunity to put those bases in places that make sense for the county. The next item, as you are all aware, during last session, the county received funding, budgetary funding, for a regional autopsy center that would be here in Union County to serve 9 counties. The way that that was drafted is not very flexible, and so one of the things that we have talked to DHHS about as we're looking at moving that project along is how we can have some flexibility in the language to move that quicker for Union County in particular and some of our neighboring counties before we might have a brand new facility up and running. The hospital is open and willing to allow a pathologist to use their morgue space at the Monroe facility. And so we think that we could really do some of this fairly quickly if the legislature would give us some flexibility in that language. And so this just shows you kind of what we think would work as a schedule for moving through the counties. And I've spoken to a couple of delegation members, and I think they are supportive. And we actually would like for DHHS to partner with us on this language, and so we have shared this with them as well, and at least so far have gotten positive reaction to that. The next item is to seek additional clarifying language for the budget language from 2022 regarding $8 million that Union County could use for land acquisition, design, permitting, and construction of any of the following: a new water reclamation facility in the Crooked Creek watershed, or an expansion of the Poplar Road pump station. I know that this could churn a whole lot of conversation. I'm just here about the legislative piece for this. And really what I would suggest that we're looking for is any flexibility we could get so that the county doesn't leave any of that money on the table at this point. So I know that staff is continuing to look at how that $4.7 million could be reimbursed, but since they will be in session, we would like to see some flexibility in that language so that you could access those dollars for other water or sewer projects that might be ripe for that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Vice Chairman Hill.
Thank you, sir. Michelle, I guess what I'm trying to ask you is would there be any chance that we could utilize these funds or perhaps make an edit so that these funds could be used for just typical R&R?
Perhaps. So you'll remember that these are ARPA funds, so we have to have that ARPA overlay. So perhaps we've been talking about what the opportunities are that we could look for that are broader than just these two buckets. So I think we would be looking for some much broader flexibility for the utility.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. This next item is a carryover from 2023, seek flexibility that allows the utility to implement a method of allocation that prioritizes industrial and commercial development. Commissioner Helms in particular asked that I carry this over, and so we're bringing this one forward again. The last item on this page, seek legislation that would allow Union County Water to sell water from the Yadkin Regional Water Project to the city of Monroe. And I added, after talking with Brian and others, I think everybody has had some discussion that the city of Monroe is interested in buying water. They're not able to under the current IBT. What Brian and I talked about last week is if we are going to seek any flexibility in this, while nobody else is lined up to buy water, let's be as broad as we can while you've got a bite at the apple. So we would try to get that language as broad as possible. The next page of items, a couple are carryovers. The first, direct NCDHHS and the LME MCOs to develop and maintain treatment and placement options for all children who come into the custody of local departments of social services. This continues to be an issue for departments of social services, not just in Union County, but around the state. And so we want to continue to make sure that the delegation understands that this is really important to us. The next is a carryover from 2023, establish drag queen performances as adult entertainment at adult establishments. I was asked to bring that one over, so that one is carried over as well. The next item came to me from Commissioner Helms, also oppose any legislation that facilitates forced annexation. I'm not sure if you want to add anything, you can, or I can keep going.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Michelle, I'll jump in. I think that this deserves at least a little bit of a brief explanation. There have been some folks in certain municipalities within the county that have brought this up, and have brought this up to me personally. One of the things that they would like to do is that whenever there's a deed transfer, so if a resident of unincorporated Union County, for example, sold their property, then that property would then be annexed into the closest municipality. And I think that, I would hope that my fellow board members would agree that this would not be a good practice for unincorporated Union County. Thank you.
The next item would be to seek funding for Union County Jail construction. This was Commissioner Helms' item as well, and I have done a little looking around to see that there, in the past budgets, the most recent two past budgets, there definitely have been allocations for judicial centers and other judicial services in other parts of the state, so I think that this is a ripe opportunity to seek funding from the state for any potential jail construction in the future. The next one is to seek legislation that increases the amount paid to counties by the state for reimbursement for housing sentenced inmates. This came from Commissioner Williams. Did a little more digging into this one as well, just to add some background. The rate that the state pays for counties to house sentenced inmates, which is a program that started several years ago, but the rate of $40 has been in place since 1997. With no movement. So this is something that the State Association of County Commissioners has looked for the last couple of years to see an increase, and we would join in with that. And Commissioner Williams, I don't know if you want to add anything to that since that was your item. No. The next item, yes.
So are you saying that since 1997, the Union County Sheriff Office is currently housing inmates for $40 an inmate?
If they are part of the state misdemeanor program and they pay us for those, we are only being paid $40 and then mileage if they are transported. Every county is getting only $40.
We don't house any inmates. We are full and we don't have enough room to pay for the programs at the state office. So we know we don't keep anybody. Now, sometimes we have to move one. But we don't, Mecklenburg's the only one that charges us for that. They charge $75 a day. Right now, we're starting in Cabarrus, they're charging $70 a day.
Okay, so just to clarify, for those that did or did not hear it, we do not currently house inmates from outside of Union County.
I didn't say that. I said we don't charge.
Oh, we're doing it for free.
We're doing it for free because they do it for us for free.
But you just said that Mecklenburg is 75.
We don't use Mecklenburg because they charge us $75.
Okay. So who are we using?
We do what?
Who, if we're not using Mecklenburg because they're charging $75 a day?
We have inmates in Stanley County.
Okay.
Anson County. They don't charge us, so sometimes we have to take one of their troubled inmates and keep in our jail. So it's a trade-off between just regional counties here. But no, we don't use Mecklenburg.
Thank you very much.
And this rate, just so this is for sentenced inmates, which there is a misdemeanor population that you have to keep essentially based on the guidance from, or the rules from the state. So this would be that piece where the state currently only reimburses at $40, which I think nobody believes, if that hasn't changed since 1997, that the cost of operating a jail has maintained that consistency. So we would be supporting seeing that rate changed in the future. The next two are also items from Commissioner Williams. Seek legislation that preserves local revenue by providing just compensation to counties for property acquired by the state and removed from the ad valorem tax base, and legislation that would repeal NCGS 105-275-45 that mandates counties must exclude 80% of the appraised value of solar energy electric system from property taxation. I'm not sure if Commissioner Williams, you want to add anything to those either?
No, it's just one of the too many examples, I think, in our state code where exemptions are granted for this kind of project or that kind of project, and it falls on local governments, and it's a real burden at times. So nothing against solar projects or all the other projects out there that state legislators carve out these exemptions for. Nothing against those projects, but that burden falls on local government, and I think those exemptions, we should look towards our delegation to get rid of those exemptions as best we can.
And these two items were also priority items for the State County Commissioners Association in the last year. So it would be in line with those actions they're seeking. Then the last group of items support legislation that seeks to repeal the Certificate of Need requirements. This is one where the staff has had some discussion, and we believe that this is something we should support with a caveat that the lease Union County has for the hospital with Atrium Healthcare creates some challenges around CON. And so what we would actually seek is we would support anything that that eliminated the Certificate of Need requirements as long as it didn't negatively impact us through our lease. And we would be opposed to anything that did have negative implications to us. So that's how we would look to react to any of those. There's clearly been a movement at the General Assembly to see some change in the CON laws. They've made some small incremental change, but I think what that signals is that there's additional change coming. So we've been keeping an eye on that the last couple of sessions to make sure that the county is not harmed financially in any way. We would also look to support additional funding support for the Department of Juvenile Justice. This is really an area, again, that impacts your social services. If DJJ, the juvenile probation, essentially, is not funded appropriately, doesn't have enough staffing, that can really bleed over into the impact that Ashley and her team have. And so this is an area that we would look to support any additional funds that the state can put in that area. Same with the next item, support state funding for treatment courts. The state several years ago did fund treatment courts throughout the state, and they took legislative action to stop that funding. Counties were able to still fund those, and in the case of Union County, continued to fund a DUI treatment court for many years and still does. This is one of the items that through the opioid funding, we are funding additional treatment courts, and I know that Judge Hucks and her staff are looking for some grant opportunities to increase what they're doing through treatment courts, and so we would support anything that the state would do in terms of funding treatment courts. And then last but not least, this came to me from Commissioner Helms and Commissioner Merrill, seek and support state funding to allow continuation of the UCPS daily in-school tutoring program. This is approximately, based on my conversation with Superintendent Houlihan, $3.5 to $4 million annually that they would be looking to have funded. And by all accounts, they believe that has been an incredibly successful program. And so we would not only support state funding, but we would actually ask for that as part of our legislative asks. And you can see the priorities that I have here. Again, you've got a lot more items than these priorities. We would provide all the items to the legislation, to our delegation, legislative delegation, with these 5 items being seen as our priorities as they go and look at the things that we really want them to tackle. But clearly, we would be looking for things that affected the rest of that agenda as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. We have a delegation breakfast scheduled for the 13th. Location to be determined. I will get that to you. And I will package this a little prettier and nicer on probably a one sheet front and back for the delegation to have in hand, and would appreciate getting support for all of these items. If you want to support all of them, if there are some that you would like to take separately, please do, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do not have a question. but I just have a comment. First off, Michelle, thank you for continuing this very important work for our county. I just have one very simple request. Move number 16, the request from Union County Public Schools, up to number 6.
Okay.
So that it's truly acknowledged as a priority instead of dead last.
No, I'll put them all in that order. That's
Yeah, I would appreciate if number 16 became number 6.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm going to ask you for some action if I can get it.
Yep.
I want you to raise your hands and say that you're all for this, and then I'll go back and repackage it. So if a vote on supporting the legislative agenda would be.
I make the
request.
motion that we support the legislative agenda that was just laid out before us. Any discussion?
As amended.
As amended. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All
Thank you
opposed?
very much.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we have Deputy County Manager Nyland is filling in tonight for County Manager Matthews, who's unable to be with us, so we'll hear from you, sir.
Just want to thank all staff that's in attendance for being here tonight, and just want to recognize Deputy Christopher Byram again for his life-saving efforts at Weddington High School. We truly appreciate it. Thank you.
And I'll start off the Commissioner's comments. I reiterate what Deputy County Manager Nyland said, and of course, I want to thank all of our law enforcement officers, our emergency medical services workers, our firefighters, all of our county staff. Look, the county employees, they're the ones that do the county's work. We just sit up here behind the dais, and they're the ones that do all the work, so I want to recognize them, and I appreciate all that they do for us. Vice Chairman Brian Helms.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just say that I wanted to recognize all the folks that took the time to speak tonight, no matter which side of the fluoride discussion that you were on. I appreciate everyone being here to speak, and that's one of the great things about what we do here is our residents do have the ability to come and voice their concerns and have their voices heard. I don't think that there's anybody that's on this board that takes health and safety for granted. So I want to assure the public that that we are doing as a board, what we feel is the best thing all around. Thank you to all the staff members who are diligent in attending these meetings and staying with us, and again, thank you to all that showed up. I certainly appreciate it and wish you all a good night.
Commissioner Melissa Merrill.
I too want to thank everyone who came out to speak tonight. I thank our staff for all the information that they have provided to us over the last couple of months. It is ironic that fluoride would attract so many people, so much conversation, but that's why we have this governmental opportunity for people to participate. I especially want to thank Mr. Fred Gerdes, who came to speak tonight. I think he was asked to leave, and that's something I think everyone should have an opportunity to participate and be here. So I want to thank him for sharing his insight with us tonight. And I do want to say that that we spent an entire day. This is not the only meeting we attend. We attend lots and lots of meetings that people hear about and the media decides to cover or not cover. But 4 of us, took an entire day off from work last week to start talking about budget discussions and issues like education and law enforcement and health and human services, and we covered almost every gamut that you could possibly imagine, on our personal time. And so, please know that, we do take this very, very seriously. And, while you may or may not believe that fluoride is important to you or your family, we're doing our very, very best, to listen to everyone. And I think if you haven't had an opportunity to listen to everything that we took 8 hours on a work day to go over with staff, I would encourage everyone, to please go take a listen to that retreat, because we covered a lot of information And with that said, I'll pass it down to Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Commissioner Merrill. I'd like to echo some of the comments that Commissioner Merrill and Commissioner Brian Helms made about the robust discussion, the robust views that were shared from our speakers. I think I counted 14 total speakers, both pro and con on the fluoride amendment. Regardless of where someone stands, I just want to applaud that and embrace that robust public involvement. I just think it's great, and I'd love to see more of the same across a whole range of issues, not just fluoride. There's so many things that we wrestle with every week, every day sometimes, and the more robust input and discussion that we get from our citizens, the better. So I was just thrilled to see that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Richard Helms.
Yes, this past year has been very challenging. Last February 2023, I had a gallbladder explode and gave me sepsis, which put me in the hospital for nearly 3 months. This clearly causes you to review your life's priorities. I came back to the board in June of 2023. This past February 5th, I was admitted to cardiac ICU and spent a week in the hospital identifying another issue. This time it turned out to be a small tear in my aorta. The doctors were unable to repair it. The only option seems to be keeping my blood pressure and my heart rate as low as feasibly possible. I also have to reduce my stress. At the advice of my physician and several cardiac specialty teams, it is great sadness that I will have to resign my position with the Union County Board of Commissioners. For the past 11 and a half years, it's been my pleasure to serve the people of Union County. During that time, we have accomplished a lot that have benefited Union County. The Yadkin Water Project provide us water for the next 100 years. The new DHS facility to serve the health of the county. Emergency services and an updated 911 center for the county citizens. The new sheriff's office with a crime lab that can turn around evidence in days, not months, like we experience today. These accomplishments were possible because of teamwork of many peers, such as Commissioner J.R. Rao, David Williams, Jerry Simpson, Dennis Rape, and Frank Akmus, and Barbara Harrison. Of course, the support of Mark Watson, Lynn West, Jason Kay, Richard Long, and Ligon Bundy, and of course the Sheriff Kathy, and so many others of our outstanding staff. I would also like to thank Chris Platay and his economic development team. So it is with great sadness and reluctance that I resign effective tonight. I want to thank you, the voters who entrusted me to serve you, and most importantly, thank you to my wife for supporting me during this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Helms. I want to thank you for your service to Union County. Commissioner Helms is currently the longest-serving member of the Board of Commissioners. Like he said, he's in his 12th year, 11 and a half years currently. And I just want to thank you for your service to the county. I appreciate all you've done on this board and all you've done for Union County. That concludes this regular meeting. Thank you for all who attended. I move that the board adjourn. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.